Okay, there we go. And it's right at the top of the hour, so there'll probably be people jumping in as we move along, but I'm going to jump in and introduce you to what we call the TekEffect. We spell tech with a K because we're talking about its impact on kids. So protecting kids from the side effects of technology. And my name is Dusty Howell, and I'm at Emporia State University. I've been here for over 2 decades. I moved here from Beijing, China, and that's where I set up the high school program for the embassy school in Beijing, China, and then moved here. So I'm going to ask you guys a question right off. There's only going to be 2 chat questions, and we will start you off with a chat question. List the #1 side effect of technology for your students. I noticed most of you were teachers, so and most were elementary, although there were some high school. So give me the #1 side effect. Okay, you may try clicking on swap display to show them the main presentation screen. Try this. See if that works better. Does that work a little better? Dabe, did I get that? And let's see. All right. ADHD-like symptoms, too many distractions, unable to focus, addiction to technology, addicted. Thank you, Dabe. And lack of ability to focus on lectures. Yeah, distractions is a big deal. In fact, I've got a full slide on the workshop that I'll be doing in 3 weeks, and it was just on distraction. My #1 strength is focus, and that's technology can really take you out of the zone, out of focus. So yeah, those are great. So let me jump in and start. Oops, a little fast here. So if you go to TekEffect.net, you won't see a lot yet. My students have been working on, graduate students at Emporia State University in the multimedia design class have been working on videos, and I do pretty much the script writing. They storyboard it and create it. So there's probably half a dozen videos up there that we've been working on over the past several years. We haven't really updated it in a few years. We've been creating a lot more content, and the idea is we're waiting for kind of a grand opening. And it's really hard to create these videos. You got to do a lot of research, and you got to jump in behind the scenes and find out what angle on the research you want to focus on. We're very pro technology here, but we are not pro technology that is used poorly, which it's sad, but too much of the technology out there is almost made for us to trip on, or in fact, they were saying one website when I was digging into this talked about how the big social networks will put the milk and the eggs in the back. That means you do get a benefit from social networking. We all like it, but they don't make it easy. They make you walk through their requirements before you get the good stuff, the milk and the eggs. So this stores in America are notorious for putting the milk and the eggs in the back of the store, and they force you to walk through the entire store to get the milk and the eggs, which most people want. They only go for the milk and the eggs, and now you're making them look at all this other stuff on the way. And I would say that was a good analogy with social networks. So, but they're free, and that's how they make their money, by getting our data. And so some proposals are make us pay for social networks so we don't have to walk to the back. Anyway, it's an interesting proposal. So TekEffect, you're not going to see a lot there right now, although we are getting really close to ramping up. In fact, you can see behind me the green screen. And yesterday's session didn't go well at all. My computer completely tripped up, and we upgraded the firmware and on my router. But I had the virtual background set up, and it was really neat. And I found out my newer Macintosh couldn't handle what we were pushing out at it, and it's just a glitch in the Mac. So we've got a couple of tickets in on it. So I'm presenting on a different computer today. We've been testing it for the last 24 hours, and this is going to be good. Anyway, if you go to our YouTube site, we have 7 followers, 7 subscribers here, and TekEffect. We've got our smartphones making us smarter, get your privacy back, tips for blocking social media distractions, things like that. So these are things my students have made. And yeah, they're a couple years old. We haven't put up the new stuff because we're waiting for kind of a grand opening where when we start putting it up, then every week we're going to be following up with something. And we're getting very close to getting that. Otherwise, my students really only create stuff in the fall and fall semester. And it's really great if you only have a couple of things a year to put up, and that's just not a great way to use YouTube. So stay tuned for that, TekEffect.net. A little bit about myself is I started teaching in Thailand. My first teaching job was to Buddhist monks, and that you can tell this picture was taken toward the end of the month. Buddhist monks shave on the full moon, and this was toward the end of the month because they were all starting to get hair. And then the day after the full moon, I couldn't tell who was who. They were just wearing orange robes, and they all looked the same, at least for the first part of the year. So seating charts were definitely in order. I taught every grade level from graduate down to pre-K, and this is the 6th grade, and we came back from a mathlete contest, my 5th, 6th combo, and they did really, really well. And here I am interviewing refugees at a Laotian refugee camp in Thailand, the Maasai tribe in Africa. I do travel a lot. And ooh, what happened there? That was I'm panning for gold with one of the tribes, hill tribes in northern Thailand. And biking, I love biking, and I like playing chess. So those are some of my hobbies. I met my wife at when I was in college, we're at seminary, and we've got 3 lovely kids. They're 19, 21, and 23 years old. So we've battled technology at home. Classes I teach: digital storytelling, digital game-based learning, introduction to developing iPhone and iPad apps, powerful PowerPoint, Prezi for educators, advanced instructional technology for teachers, and multimedia design. So those are some of the classes I teach at Emporia State University. Those are my favorite classes, actually. So let's jump into protecting kids from the side effects of technology. The most connected generation ever. I don't think people would disagree with that. But in what way are they connected? What way are kids connected? Are they connected with each other, or are they just connected to the screen? So if you take a look at our screens today, and let me do something here. If you take a look at our screens today, there's just a lot of media coming down the pipeline. And here's what Nielsen said in 2008. Here's how much media the average 18-year-old was watching on screen time a day, right? So there's live TV and time-shifted TV. And then there's internet on computer and apps and all these things. So did it go up or down in the last year between the third quarter 2018 to the third quarter 2019? In that year, I mean, can you imagine the average adult is spending 10.5 hours online or on screens of some sorts? And if you guessed up, yep, it went up quite a bit. Now, do you think it went up with COVID? Did COVID take it up or down? Well, COVID took it way up. And here's what Nielsen says. Nielsen says that staying put in our homes can lead to almost a 60% increase in the amount of content we watch, and potentially more. And so when we stay indoors, we tend to watch more screen than ever. And that certainly was the case this time. The stats that kept coming out. And Nielsen used South Korean information in February to show that in South Korea and Italy, people were watching more TV, and they got COVID about a month before we did. All right, so if you are looking at our connectedness, if you could look at all the connections that we are online, interacting, you're going to see that we are very connected. But are we just connected that way, or are we connected to real people, real time, like we are now? And most people would say this: hey, this is the way it is. It's we're online with real people, real time. Then why are we the most lonely and depressed generation right now? This generation is the most lonely and depressed ever, and what's up with that? So the research that just came out last year, Twenge at San Diego State. Now, she is the #1 university researcher on studying generational differences. And she goes back almost 80 years comparing apples to apples tests on students over 80-year span of time and people. And she is a maverick at finding differences. But what she saw in 2012, 2013, 2014, up till now has really shocked her. And this report shows, if you see the general scientific survey at the bottom of that, I'm going to blow that up. And the general summary of her findings was that more U.S. adolescents and young adults in late 2017. So she compared 2005 to 2017. And the 2017 young adults and adolescents experienced serious psychological distress and major depression. And this was not existent in those over 26. Now, what's going on? Why are 17-year-olds or adolescents and young adults up to 25 getting severely depressed? And actually, those that were 19 to 25 were even more depressed than, in fact, we'll take a look at that here. There are 611,000 surveys. There's a huge jump in depression for teens, 52%, and young adults had a 63% jump in the USA. There's no jump in adults over 26. So what's going on? What happened to this generation? Suicides are going up. I could probably ask you if you know somebody that's committed suicide, and we do know of a very, very good friend that young teen was just starting university, committed suicide last year. Just rocked our family. So what happened here? What's going on? Well, her big number there in 2009, what was going on in 2009 and jumped in 2019? And that's how many people own smartphones. So 2009, 50% of adolescents, young adults own smartphones. By 2019, 85%. That was a big jump. So 2009 finally saw over half of our adolescents, young adults with smartphones. And that's a big clue. And now another clue that she hints at is we're the sleepiest. These are the sleepiest young adults and sleepiest teens ever. So think about that. If you don't get your sleep, and what's cutting into our sleep? Well, we'll see that it's some of these technologies are cutting into our sleep. You don't have sleep, you get depressed. So if you take a look at this, depressed and lonely, which one of those would you say is the biggest problem? And I am going to ask you a poll. If I can find my poll. One of these multiple screens has a poll on it. Come on. I guess I got to jump out of this for a second and get into my poll. Where's my secret bar? Here it is. Okay, so poll number 1 here, launch poll. All right, you guys, let me know. Which of these 4 technologies negatively impacts your students the most? Think of it from a teacher, but you can answer from yourself, your own point of view also. And I seriously don't have an answer for this. I'm just looking for your answers here. I have some guesses here, but let's see. So 2 more people haven't voted. Okay, so let's jump in and we'll end the poll here. And let's see. I'm going to share the results here just so you can see that. And so number 1 was smartphones. Number 2 is video games. Those 2 were the big ones that you guys voted on. 3 was TV, and they're all bad. Okay, that's all right. So we're going to jump back in and take a look at some more slides. And so put my polls over here and jump back into this. Okay, so and that's the poll question we just took. So let's take a look at this. Statistics continue to show there's a huge increases in media consumption. So every year they do this, or every 5 years when they do a huge study on media consumption, they find out numbers just keep jumping. And they keep jumping. Every time they say it can't jump anymore, then they jump again. There's no way kids can watch more. So 2009, the last big poll that they did this on, they thought there's no way they could jump from 2009 or 2004 to 2009, and there was a huge jump. And then 2010, the iPad came out, and we keep seeing these big jumps. And it's all over the world too, so it's not just here. So we're seeing a huge increases in media consumption. And maybe we should have, when we have a family picture, it should all be around a screen. You know, pick a screen, because we're spending more time with the screen than we probably are with our families. So it's been the case for a long time. This is not just this generation. All right, so wait, what's going on here? So let's protect kids from TV. So my second poll question is coming out, and let me send you a poll again. Let's see, poll number 2. Tell me, is TV a problem? Should we be protecting kids from the side effects of TV? And you could say, no, it's not really a problem, or it's a small problem, a medium problem, or a huge problem. So we're going to do this with TV, then we're going to go to video games, then we're going to go to computers, and then we'll go to smartphones. So those are the four that we're going to do this on. And let me share results here, and the poll, and share the results. So the results show that it's a medium level problem. TV is a medium level problem, and you're probably right about that. But let's take a look at it and move this over here, jump back into our, all right, so TV. How does TV impact our physical health? Have you looked at that? It's quite an interesting question to ask. So protracted television watching is a major contributor to obesity. And this was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. It's TV and video game use accounted for 60% of childhood obesity. It's now considered a North American epidemic. Now this is back in 98 and 2005. That was before some of these other technologies come in. Now, let me show you something that was quite interesting. This was in 1993. Tennessee researchers discovered that a child, and this is published in Pediatrics, that a child watching television expends even less energy than a child doing nothing at all. In fact, they had the kids, they measured the energy expenditures of the children while they were at rest and while they were watching TV. In fact, they didn't even have the kids move. They just slid a wall between the TV screen and where they were. And they found the children had lower metabolic rates while watching television than they did while doing nothing at all. Staring at a blank wall, you burn more calories. Unbelievable. In fact, the researchers concluded that apparently about all TV watching kids do is lie there and get fat. So you burn more calories staring at a blank wall than you do watching TV. Luckily, TV throws ads at us every 7 minutes so you can wake up, unless you got cable. So, oh boy. All right, another big study. This is the British Journal of Sports Medicine in 2011. And they studied, this is a huge study down in Australia, watching too much TV is as dangerous as smoking or being overweight. And the ubiquitous sedentary behavior should be seen as a public health problem. So the deal is you're so still when you're watching TV, your whole body slows down. It's not very healthy. So they studied 11,000 Australians and found that on average, every hour of TV viewed after the age of 25 reduces your life expectancy by 21.8 minutes. It's so sedentary. Now, this really impacts those that watch a lot. I mean, if you're watching 6 hours of TV a day, if you're watching an hour, I'm not sure this holds up. But for those that watch a lot of TV, this really, that sedentary effect is just not good for us. So it's about the same as smoking every half hour is the same as one cigarette, if you want to look at it that way. Anybody heard of No-Tell Canada? Since there were a lot of elementary educators, I thought this would be a really good one to show. Does TV make us friendlier? Are we friendly? Watch TV, go out and shake people's hands, you're nice to them. Well, No-Tell. Now that's, I don't know what city this is in Canada because they studied 3 cities, No-Tell, Unitel, and Maxtel. And Unitel was 7 miles up the road from No-Tell, and No-Tell stands for no television. The city in Canada, 1973, had no television signals. It was in the mountains and they couldn't get a signal in there. So they had no TV, no TV. VCRs weren't out at the time. If you weren't connected to towers, you didn't get you didn't have TV. So when they finally got a tower in there to that school, researchers did something brilliant. Williams led the study, and they went in and looked at the schools in No-Tell, and 7 miles up the road, they checked out a school that had 1 channel, checked out another community with 1 channel, and then they went another 7 miles and checked out a school that had multiple 3 or 4 channels. Now, this is back in the days when we only had 3 TV channels anyway in the US, or 4 for the most part. So what happened in there, they went into the schools and they went into the playgrounds and the classrooms, and they started watching kids in all 3 of these communities before television hit. And what happened was so surprising. The rates did not change in the two other towns, but when TV was introduced into No-Tell, violence spiked. Kids were biting each other, and it had a profound effect. In fact, they had to go relook at the data. They thought it couldn't. They had to have something wrong with the data. 1 channel coming into your community was enough to increase the violence. It doubled the violence. More kids biting and physical aggression, and it lowered their IQ, lowered the reading scores, you name it. It was not a good thing, but it was a neat study that they did. And then they went in 2 years later, and No-Tell was exactly like Unitel and Maxtel. I mean, it was the same. Their aggression and violence had risen there. So kind of interesting. So the TV violence aggression link is very strong, clearly causal, and surprisingly large. It's larger than the link between lead exposure and kids' IQ. And it's slightly smaller than the documented effect of smoking on lung cancer. This is a huge, huge effect. Now, who has done the study? This is pretty big. All of these groups didn't believe the other groups. So the AMA, the Congress did a big study, the Surgeon General, CDC, National Institutes of Health. These have all done their own huge studies on this. Yeah, you bring TV into your community, violence is going to go up. That's just what it is. So you can't expect your kids to be nicer. I remember when I taught 1st grade in California, one of my kids got into a fight coming in from a fire drill. And, oh, great. What's going on? What are you doing? I said, did you stay up last night to watch Running Man with Schwarzenegger at 10 o'clock? And he smiles at me, no. He said they replayed it a second time at midnight, and I watched the midnight showing of it. And I couldn't stop him from fighting. He was just, and he says, nobody messes with my 2 friends. His 2 fists, anyway. Poor kid. But TV does have an impact. So is TV making us smarter? So every additional hour a week of TV that a kid was exposed to at 29 months old. So think about that. That's 2 years, 5 months old. So every additional hour, so these kids are on some sort of screen. This is not from zero, but if a kid is watching an additional hour over the average at the time, they went back in and they looked at these kids at 29 months, they looked at them at 53 months, and then they looked at them at 10 years old when they got to 5th grade, and they looked at it. And what happened was the exposure of screens at 29 months had an impact. The 53 months didn't have as big of a deal, but they found it was a huge deal on how much exposure to TV you had at 29 months. So for every additional hour you watched, there was 6% decrease in class engagement. And you see all the rest there. 10% increase in victimization by peers, less physical activity. So if your screen was on at your house, your TV was always on, which a lot of houses it is, and you had 3 hours over the average, you could just multiply that. So you'd have an 18% decrease in class engagement years later, 7 years later, when they checked you at 10 years old. So this is kind of scary. Here's another study that's very interesting. Age 4 years old, they go in and they let these kids watch 9 minutes of a cartoon. And you could figure out from the research study, this was published in Pediatrics, 9 minutes of a SpongeBob, 9 minutes, that was the fast action, 9 minutes of Arthur, and you could draw for 9 minutes. And then what happened they were looking at how long does this take to impact your prefrontal lobes, your executive functioning in your brain, which is impacted right away. Can you make good choices? Really interesting what they found out. So they gave these kids 3 tests. They gave them, or 4 tests, the HTKS test, right? So when I say head, I want you to touch your toes. When I say knees, I want you to touch your shoulders. So you have to think backwards. And then there was the backwards digits test. I say 1, 3, you say 3, 1. There was the delayed gratification test. How long can you wait for? They only waited 5.5 minutes. That was the max, but the kids don't know that. So how long could a kid wait for some marshmallows? And the last one was the Hanoi test, Tower of Hanoi. So how well did those, just watching 9 minutes of SpongeBob, SpongeBob lasts 11 minutes, right? They didn't even get to watch the end of the show, but that really, really creamed their executive function. They were not able to complete any of these tasks successfully after watching that. In fact, they don't know how long it lasted. I read some follow-up research that said it lasted over an hour. An hour after you watch SpongeBob, you still cannot, your prefrontal lobes and executive functioning is not up to speed. Now, Arthur, interestingly, the drawing group scored better than the other 2. But Arthur, actually, educational TV did better on 2 of these tests. Arthur helped the kids on the head HTKS test, head, toes, knees, shoulders test, and the I think it was the marshmallow test. So Arthur helped on those 2 conditions, but the average was by far better for the drawing group. They did all 4 of these much better. And boy, SpongeBob, 1 episode, not even a full episode, can hurt a kid's ability to think. So TV has a long rap sheet. It makes you overweight, it adds stress, it kills time, it's addictive, it increases ADD, ADHD, and violence increases, kills creativity, lowers IQ, makes you buy things. So that's a rap sheet of TV. And people in computer industry knew about this. Before I talk about this rap sheet, because the computer industry was really, really interested in proving that computers were different than TV. And we're going to talk about that, but we're going to jump through the video games first. So the video games, protecting kids from video games. And this is Call of Duty. We're not going to talk too much about this. There is definitely a violence connection with this stuff. And Call of Duty was really what'd they do? $1 billion in 15 days back in 2012. Let me jump up with the poll number 3 here, and evaluating video games, and launch a poll here. So are video games a problem? Should we be protecting kids from the side effects of video games? Not really a problem. Yes, small. Yes, medium. Yes, huge. See what you guys say on that. All right, so let's see here. Okay, well, interesting. We'll end the poll and share the results. And most of you guys say, yeah, it's a huge problem. So 9 of you say it's a huge problem. 3, it's a medium level problem. And so instead of talking about the violent games, and in the workshop, I'll probably do a little bit more talking about that. I mean, Hollywood knows that Call of Duty sold, I mean, $1 billion. They made $1 billion in 15 days when this came on the market. And the year earlier, made $1 billion in I think 16 days. A year earlier for another episode of this. So it can make the money. Hollywood doesn't make this kind of money with their movies. So this definitely gets the attention of Hollywood. And there definitely is a connection. So an interesting book on this, Stop Teaching Our Kids to Kill. Lieutenant Dave Grossman is the guy a lot of times we'll fly into when there's a school shooting, church shooting, something like that. And he will unpack this. And the fact that 20 independent tests found that violent video games increased aggressive thoughts in males and females, children, adults. I mean, nobody pretty much disagrees with that. So, but I'll probably talk about one that you guys might, it seemed like there was a lot of people might have more kids hooked on Minecraft. And Minecraft is an interesting game. I've played it a few times. I usually play these games just to check them out. I like chess. I'm a chess player, so I don't jump into these too much. But I've got a couple of kids that are gamers. So Minecraft is pretty interesting. And what's not to like? You're building everything. You're mining. You mine underground to get things, to get minerals, to get things, to find things, and then you craft them. So you craft them together and you build things. So what's not to like about that? Now, it's really neat because you pull together, like if you're going to put glass, you want to build this house, yeah, you have to get the different materials, you have to mine it, you have to mine this glass here. But glass, how do you make glass? Well, you have to get a furnace, and you have to get fire, you have to light the furnace, and you get a bunch of sand that you go down in mines and you dig it up and you mix it together and it makes glass. So you have to make things. You craft things together, which is interesting. So I had a son that convinced his teacher to let him build a civilization, a great civilization. I want to build this for and teacher said yes. And I'm the type of teacher who would definitely say yes to this. A student could definitely talk me into an out of the box type of project. And my wife is still angry about this. And we actually asked my son, this is 7 years ago, when he talked to his middle school teacher into letting him do this 40-hour Minecraft civilization project, which tied to nothing in real history. It was just building a big civilization that he could show off to his friends. And even this morning, I asked him, I said, so was that worth it? Was that good bang for the buck? Did you learn a lot there? No, Dad. That was I just had a lot of fun. So the teacher raved about it. Meanwhile, he was flunking some of his other assignments in other classes, building this huge, huge thing. So anyway, now, if you're going to get into Minecraft, I recommend pushing your kids into mining for redstone. Redstone is like electricity, and command blocks, right? Because command blocks allow you to do a little bit of programming. I teach programming, and I'm running a robotics. We're finishing up an NSF robotics grant on helping middle school kids use robotics on farms, and like creating a sensor, programming a small sensor with, so when the chicken coops, the sensor sees, oh, it's sunrise, and then the chicken coop will open the door and the chickens can come out. That kind of idea, and how to use sensors and easy programming or moderately easy programming. So this command blocks gives you a chance to do a little bit of programming. So it's not, I mean, at least you're getting into the harder you're moving electricity, and you can do some things that might be a little bit more educational. My other son said he loved going into the nether portal. And what do you see on the other side of the nether portals? Well, you see these zombie pigmen, right, who are trying to kill you. So that's one of those things. And I do, I'll mention I hosted a little Minecraft for the teens, right? Minecraft for a church group, right? And halfway through it, I noticed my son is killing another friend in Minecraft. So what are you doing? Oh, it's Minecraft. We're playing Minecraft Hunger Games, Dad, which, all right, it is what it is. But this was a church outing, you know, the church frowned on me for hosting this. I didn't know that was a possibility. So Minecraft can be a huge distraction. I would recommend pushing the command blocks and redstone if you can. So let's jump into computers. Let's jump into computers, and let me jump into my fourth poll. And are computers a problem? And let me jump this up here, launch the poll. Should we be protecting kids from side effects of computers? Not really a problem. Small problem, medium level problem, huge problem. What do you guys think there? Are computers a problem? And what's getting hard to assess is computers are, they're like the smartphones, right? Your smartphone is a mini computer. So, so the answer here is yes, but it's a small problem, right? Probably more of an educational device. Let me share the results here. More of an educational device, if anything. And probably right there. Let me share you some interesting things. So I mentioned earlier that TV had this long rap sheet. Well, and computers were desperate to separate themselves from that. So you had Apple, Hewlett-Packard, Intel, AT&T, NSF all got together, and they paid $1.5 million for this 3-year internet study by Carnegie Mellon. Now, Carnegie Mellon had just built the computer that had, with IBM, that had beaten Kasparov in chess. So Carnegie Mellon had the best computer science program at the time. And they wanted to study the social features of the internet, chat and email, because they knew that interactivity was different from TV. TV, you're just passive. I mean, if you have a remote control, that's about it. Otherwise, you're just sitting there generally. So they were testing the social features. They were pushing out that because they knew that would give computers the edge. And what did they find out? Well, 2 years in, New York Times says, front page, sad, lonely world discovered in cyberspace. So what all those companies do? They do, and this was interesting, depressed. People who spend even a few hours a week online experienced higher levels of depression and loneliness. Also, teenagers tended to spend more time online and showed a greater rate of loneliness and depression. So he said, oh, it's just because it must be teenagers. There's no cause and effect here. And what did most of those companies do? They went and find 7 more scientists that could prove that computers were good for you, instead of diving into this. So it actually took us 20 years to really dig into this. Are they a problem, or is it just because teens hang out and teens are more likely to go through depression? Well, interestingly, this happened. Melissa G. Hunt at Penn, U of Penn, finally proved that social media use increases depression and loneliness. And she studied Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram, those 3. Those were the big 3 the college students were using. So she studied freshmen in college, and she found out the more they were on those 3, the more depressed and lonely. And so it is causal. You can't say, oh, just because it's their age. No, she went and tested people that weren't on those platforms. She had a control group, and she had a group. And the more time you spend on any one of those 3, the more lonely and depressed you get, which seems really counterintuitive. This is social media. You're on social media. How? It doesn't make sense. So I wish that these companies had dug into this a little deeper much earlier, but I'm really glad Melissa did this. So if you compare the sad, lonely world discovered in cyberspace in '98 with Melissa Hunt's social media use increases depression and loneliness, and we're not saying get rid of your social media, but less is better, less is more. The more time you're on, the more lonely and depressed you get. So now, before we dig too far into this, we have a lot of information on TV. TV's been around for 70 years. We've been studying it for over 70 years. But while these different platforms, right? Facebook's only been around since for the last 16 years. And YouTube hasn't been around. Smartphones, 2017, the first time a smartphone came out in the App Store, 2018. iPads didn't come out till 2010, and Instagram and Snapchat were about 8 months, 10 months apart in 2011. So we don't have a lot of data on these types of things. We're finding more. But what we do know, Duke did a big study, and they found that computers at home lower middle school reading and math scores. 5-year study of 150,000 5th to 8th grade students by Duke University found that having a computer at home has a negative impact on student math and reading test scores. And they found this internationally too. It wasn't just in America. And they found the more time on, the worse it is. And they actually found out at school, it wasn't much better. But at school, generally, there's a teacher who's monitoring you. So let's see. So what about this? So if you've seen Cartoon Network, now what if you have a kid that does this before they come to one? I don't even know where to categorize the iPad tablets, right? I'm putting it right now between smartphone and between computers and smartphone. But users with paid TV can get the full app. So I have the Cartoon Network app on my iPad, but I don't pay TV. So I can't get the watch and play option. So, and here's what they said when they opened this up. For far too long, us multitaskers of the world have had to suffer through the indignity of having to track 2 entirely different screens when we want to play a game and watch TV. But now, guess what? You can play and watch at the same time. So think about that. A kid, before he comes to school, he's on his iPad and he's watching a cartoon watching a cartoon up here, and he's playing a game down here. Watching, playing, watching, playing, watching, playing. This is even worse than SpongeBob, right? Because what's going on with this kid's prefrontal lobe and executive functioning? How long is that kid going to take before he's finally ready to listen? And what are the odds that kid's going to say your class is boring? Well, they're pretty high, pretty high. So, so let's jump into cell phones, smartphones, and the last poll I'm going to give you here is, oh, I left that up here, didn't I? Stop sharing. Let's jump into the 5th poll here, and let's evaluate smartphones. Are smartphones a problem? Should we be protecting kids from the side effects of smartphones? No, yes, yes, a middle, medium, and yes, a huge problem. What are you thinking here? Okay, so it looks like, and the poll here, and most of you say, yeah, it's a huge problem. Smartphones are a huge problem, and I would agree with you, and Twingy at San Diego State would probably agree with you also. So nobody said they were a small problem. So interestingly, let's move this over here, and now at Michigan State, they were studying smartphone use, late night smartphone use. They found out if you check your phone, this is for business people in business. This is published in a organizational behavior and human decision processes. And these MBA, people with MBAs really want to make good decisions, right? And so what they find out? They found out that the if you checked your phone one time after 9 p.m., you were more sleep deprived the next day. You just check it one time after 9. What happens is you check it and you're usually on for a while. It's really hard to check it. But even if you check it and got off of it, you still lost your REM sleep. You still lost energy the next day. And so they said there were 3 reasons for that. There are theories, right? We're coming up with theories. This is too early in the research to figure this out. But time displacement. So when you're on after 9 o'clock, you're displacing sleep time now with this. So you're going to lose some sleep time. And there's this red light thing, or the blue light. Blue light. So blue light hits you, and even when Apple finally released its night, what's called night shift. 2 years late, in my mind. They found out 2 years later that, oh, sorry, night shift doesn't work. You still have to lower your screen intensity because there's still too much blue light coming through. So blue light keeps you awake. I mean, when the sun comes up in the morning, it's a lot of blue light there and saying, wake up, wake up. So if you're looking at your iPad at night and there's blue light hitting you because your filter is not taking on enough of the blue light, even with a blue light filter on, pretty much is telling you to wake up. It's time to get up. And teens were 10 times more susceptible to blue light than adults. So kids really impacted by a little bit of blue light. So if you got any light in there, and guess what? TVs push out blue light. Screens push out blue light. You know, you have to get these blue light filters. And pretty much screens need to go off. And the sooner they go off, then they should go up an hour before bedtime to give you a chance to wind down. And there's cognitive arousal. So if you check that phone one time, what are the odds that, oh no, my friend said something that hurt my feelings, whatever it is, or there's some surprising news, or whatever it is that you find out, there's arousal, cognitive arousal. It thrills you. You say, wow, what's going on? So it's hard to get to sleep after that. So it impacts sleep. And I dug into this research, really neat research. A large study in the United Kingdom impacted the sleep of 11 to 13-year-olds. So this was really, really neat. So if you look at it, TV, so if you allow TV to help you fall asleep, you took generally 22 more minutes to fall asleep. If you allowed music to help you get to sleep, it's the same. That was the same number. But music was listed as the worst thing to help you fall asleep, and everything else was bad. Screens, cell phones, you name it. Waking up at night, TV was the worst because if you leave TV on, it'll wake you up during the night generally. And let's see, nightmares, and they did some really interesting stuff here. So technology is not helping us. Facebook was the worst culprit. If you check Facebook before you go to bed, you're going to sleep 51 minutes less than the average person. You're going to be on 51 minutes. You're pushing off sleep a lot longer. So this was really, really interesting research. So if you use technology to help you go to sleep, it doesn't work. Oh, but I have to. I've always done it. So let's look at some strategies here. We're going to jump into a few strategies here. So I want you to go into the chat room this time and list the #1 side effect of technology for yourself. So what is the #1 side effect that you know for yourself? You having any issues with, are there side effects? Any of those side effects we talked about before impacting you? Sleep, definitely. Distraction from other tasks. Dry eyes, forgetting what I was doing. Yeah, that's me. Eye fatigue is big time. Big time. Not being able to fall asleep, lethargy, too much time spent on Facebook. Yeah. In Denmark, they were pretty angry at Facebook, so they, or it could have been the Netherlands. I'll have to look into that. They came up with the 99 days of freedom, the 99-day thing, where they recommended you get off Facebook for 99 days and test your life before and after. Did Facebook improve your life? It's quite an interesting idea. Of course, Facebook has hired the chief the chief researchers at that university now. So they pulled out neat idea. So let's see, can't fall asleep. Yeah, sleep. That's a lot of interesting things. Lost time, not getting much time. Yeah. So time well spent is a new idea that's coming up, and even marked up. Yeah, we want our time to be time well spent. So at the end of the summer, you say, it's been time well spent. So there's a few things here that will help you. And maybe in the workshop, we're going to dig more into how you can make sure time is well spent. It's hard to hear you. Something went wrong with my mic. Okay, hopefully mention the mic issue again if it happens again. Maybe it's turning my head a little bit. So what is the elephant in the room? Is it the screen here? Is it the screen here? Or is it here? I mean, is it the computer? Is it a high def screen? Is it the cell phone that's sitting over here? Is it the video game play? What is the elephant in the room out of all the technologies? And researchers actually say the elephant in the room is the elephant in the room. The biggest problem, they say, is TV. And TV is still impacting our kids far more than everything else. And a lot of it is because the TV's on and I'm multitasking. I'm doing two things. I'm on my smartphone and I'm on the TV, and I'm on the smartphone or watching TV on the phone. So protect kids from TV. So the number one tip is get the TV out of bedrooms, adults and kids. If you're going to recommend to parents one thing this year, take that TV out of the room. Let little Johnny get some sleep every night so he can actually learn in classroom. And make sure TV is not the centerpiece of your house. If TV is the centerpiece of your house, then when you sit in the chairs, everything's pointing to the TV. So there's very little interaction. Make sure there's a couple of chairs focusing on each other. So it's not a centerpiece. Don't watch TV on your TV. So a lot of people will take their Facebook apps or social media apps and only use it in one spot. So they'll either put it on their smartphone and not on their computer, or they'll put it on their computer. So they only do that on their computer and they take it off their smartphone. So you got to figure out what works for you, but definitely TV on your smartphone, probably not a good idea. Family meal times, watching TV around the meal, where's that discussion going on? So they had what's called, I call the dinner table university. Harvard followed 65 families for 8 years, Harvard grad school, and they found out dinner time was more valuable to child development than playtime, school, and story time, and there's more opportunities to learn vocabulary. So if you're eating TV dinners, the TV dinners are not really helping your kids very much. Location, 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 where is that TV sitting? Rearrange furniture so the focus is not on the TV, and place the TV maybe out in the garage for a month. Maybe send it on vacation for a month. Maybe keep it out of the kids' rooms. And maybe if TV is not the issue in your house, maybe you'll do one of these ideas with another device. Send video games on vacation for a month or something like that. So protecting kids from the video games. So one of the things we do in our house is they had to earn every hour of reading, they earned 30 media minutes. So 2 hours of reading gets an hour of media minutes, which they could use on a video game or a TV or computer. So that was one of the tips that we've gone with. The impact of singular, now this is quite interesting. Do you have your kids do their homework first and then you can play your video games? Well, check this out. This was a study. Now there weren't very many kids in the study, a dozen. But because they were studying the sleep impact, the different levels of sleep on every one of these kids. And so they had them come home, do their homework first, and that's 4 hours before bedtime. And then a couple hours before bedtime, they played either a video game or watched 1 hour of a video game or 1 hour of an action movie. And what happened was pretty interesting. They homework first and then 1 hour. The video game led to significant declines in memory. They couldn't remember what they had studied 2 hours before. My only tip on this one is that they think the prefrontal lobe is so filled up with video game, right? The video game's really, really upset. You're having to make choices. You're having to do things. There's a lot going on there. And before they go to bed, you should go through lessons that they had learned earlier, so that in their sleep, they're not, the video game memories and dreams don't just absorb their sleep time. Allow their dreams to have some of that homework time. So I would say do a little bit of their homework before bed. So when they go to bed, that's the last thing they're thinking about. The movies, watching 1 hour of an action movie didn't hurt their memory at all, but it reduced their sleep efficiency. They didn't sleep as well. So, and interestingly, these are not watching movies or playing games right up to bedtime. There was 2 hours after the movie before they went to bed. So that was kind of a little scary. How do you protect kids from computers? Well, get students on your side. The top student, my professor at the University of Wisconsin, his son was a major computer guru in the day and offered the teacher at his high school, can I help you? And no, in those days it was no, sit down, I am running this lab. Well, his son taught all the kids how to do the Alt Tab, and so they played video games in there all the time. While she was walking around, they had a way to Alt Tab between what they were doing and what she was teaching them, and she never discovered that. And instead, she should have pulled the top maverick on her side and said, hey, yes, help me. Let's get some work done together. Another thing with computer, checking your likes is the new smoking. Kids are always checking their likes. My daughter pulled down a picture of herself because there were only 8 likes in 20 minutes. Oh, I can't leave that up there. So kids are following likes, and it's becoming very addicting. It's the new smoking. So got to get kids stop comparing themselves. And protecting kids from the phones. Now, this is interesting, and I was thinking about how do I use this in this class. University of Texas found out, new research from Texas discovered that the location of your smartphone can hurt your ability to think. So even in this session, where is your smartphone? So they had 520 college students, and they tested how the location of their smartphones impacted their ability to take tests. Everyone silenced their phones, and what was interesting, group 1 took the test with their smartphones face down on the desk. All right, ringers off, and group 2 had the phones in the bag behind them. Group 3 took the phones out of the room. So those with phones in the other room significantly outperformed the other 2 groups. The worst was the phones down on the desk. It's killing our ability to think. So right now, my graduate students, I shared this research, and we move the phones out of the room. And undergrads, oh, they hate that. They hate that. Oh, I can't live without my phone. But really, think about what it's doing to the brain. Their ability to process. Your working memory is shunted if you have the phone too close to you. So fixing that, moderation. Don't use your phone a lot. No phones or charging stations in the bedroom. If you use it as an alarm clock, stop. Buy an alarm clock. And no phones within an hour of bed. That would be my. So our gadgets need to serve us. Are we serving others with our gadgets, or are our gadgets serving us? And you have to control your gadgets. So last summer, I presented Is Your Screen Time Well Spent? And I did that in overseas, over in Europe. And then in another conference, how much of our social media use is time well spent? And so here is the QR code if you want to take a quick grab and evaluate this workshop, or the presentation I just gave. The TekEffect workshop, protecting kids from the side effects of technology and ensuring that screen time is time well spent, will be Thursday, June 18th, 2 to 5. So sign up at that same spot that you signed up for this one. So anyway, that's our show today, our presentation. Yes, you're going to get a copy of the PowerPoints. I sent it to Dabe. It's about a 6 megabyte. What I did is I saved them on 10 sheets of paper, 9 slides per page. So it's a PDF. Hopefully that works for you. Definitely. And let me jump to the last slide here. Now, I'm not checking my email this summer because I'm working and researching the TekEffect. So I'm trying to write a book on this and working on more media, how to get the media out. So if you want to get a hold of me, you can email me at dhowell@emporia.edu. That's my email, but I'm not checking that until August. I'm focused on, and email can take you off focus like nothing else. But I do check this line. So dhowell@tekeffect.net is one I do check. So that is our show. I hope it helps. Really, I'm very pro technology, but I don't like to use technology poorly. And it's hard for teachers to use it well when kids are losing sleep and coming in groggy. And even as a teacher, I'll have to admit, I've had days where I've come in and I have just been sucked by technology, and I can't say that was time well spent a lot of times. So anyway, that's a neat idea, and there's not a lot out there on it, and I'm uncovering what I can, and we've had students playing with this for the last couple years. So hopefully I did interview 10 people at the MACE conference and ask what they thought about time well spent, how to protect kids and time well spent. So those are going to come on our vlog, video blog, sometime soon. So anyway, there you have it. That's the end of our presentation. I'm going to stop the screen sharing. If you got any more comments, throw them in to the chat, and I think that works.